if it aligns with your policy framework, this is what you want to deliver, this was your manifesto. I think that will come in, you realize that the previous president was doing this, and you can actually continue doing. And this is an international relationship matter. It's not an issue of me and Muga, who probably were in different parties now agreeing and doing things together. It's about the processes of international relationships and business partnerships. So it doesn't stop just because the president has exited. If it needs to continue, then the person who holds that docket can continue with it and ensure that it can be delivered. So the wins that we had yesterday is just not a win. It's not a loss because it was not the president who started. It is a win because finally we have the things that we are looking for as a country. So the partnership that we are having does not benefit President William Ruto. It benefits the country as a whole and the business people of this country. So I think that's the match that we need to look at it, the angle we need to look at it from.
There, of course, there was the other reaction of the other East African countries that dilly-dallied in getting a deal, a common deal with the EU, and then Kenya took this matter up and they ran ahead with it. What's the likely blowback from the other EAC states now that Kenya has this particular pact with the EU that gives them preferential access, trade access into the EU market, that gives EU manufacturers and traders preferential access into the Kenyan market? But regionally, we also have another trade deal that talks about how we are promoting intra-EAC trade by also imposing sanctions on goods from other countries. How is this likely to play out?
The pact between between Kenya and the EU. It's not between Kenya and Tanzania and Uganda and the EU. It is a pact between Kenya and the EU, the movement of those products in between. And all the countries have sovereignties in their own business operations. And we're also looking at the open market protocols that we are looking at right now. We are getting to a point whereby the global market is an open market, where you can trade across the global, depending on where your benefits as a business. We have seen countries that have moved to sign pacts. You've seen Tanzania, Uganda, they're signing their own pacts with other partners. Does it then stop us that we can sit and pause and say, okay, fine, we are waiting for a consensus within the EAC for us to have an agreement on this and this regarding our nation and other markets? I don't think so. If there are benefits that can be directly beneficial to the things that we produce, we're talking about agriculture, for instance, agricultural exports. We produce those exports, agricultural exports as well. We are not importing from Uganda, then we transport to the EU. We are trading between Kenya, as it is as a nation, and the EU. We are not signing on behalf of any other country. We're having a pact between Kenya and the EU. And I think we have that level of transnational independence.
That's all understood. Yeah. My question is, you see, Kenya also is a signatory to the East African Common Market Protocol, which has its own deals and protocols that talk about how we trade regionally and also how we give each other preferential treatment when it comes to trade. But because we're giving each other preferential treatment, we also are very careful on how external markets access this market or how we access the other external markets. And that's why there's a whole conversation of why don't you have, the EU is dealing with us as a block of countries. We are dealing as one country, and yet we have the East African community. Why couldn't we, as Kenya, as the people who can see the bigger picture, work within the EAC and convince our brothers and sisters in the EAC that let's sign a pact with the EU together? Remember, as a person who speaks after the president has spoken, the president has talked about this before. Why are African countries being dealt with singularly to go and meet with, one big country or one EU, one UK, one US? We need to be talking as Africa. We need to be treated as a big African giant that we are. And yet here we are signing a deal as Kenya and not the EAC.
I think we are being unfair to ourselves and to our sovereignty to an extent, because there are different conversations going on within different units. The EAC is still there. Nobody has messed up with the trade between Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, and any other country in between. Europe coming in does not mean that now you're not going to trade with Uganda or Tanzania. At least my own very basic understanding. We've seen the president over the last couple of weeks working around the unity of Africa and the economic. I'm talking about even about Afri-Exim Bank coming in as a trading unit to trade amongst each other. Does that mean that you cannot trade with other countries outside the African conglomeration. Doesn't mean that. It only means that, yes, you can have that trade relationship outside, but you can also have these other trade relations that you can have within the EAC and within the region as it is. So I think we are being very unfair to ourselves if we say that we are going, like you have said, you started very well, you said they are dilly-dallying. So if they are dilly-dallying, how is it our responsibility?
So if there's a position for Kenya to be able to take something and run with it while the others are deciding, it doesn't mean that, Kenya has forsaken the community, as it were, but there's also opportunities that Kenya can take and go with that.
And I think that would work in reverse. Does it mean that other countries within the EAC have not had trade pacts with other nations? They have had. Does it mean that we have had a political or a business impasse with those people because they have made decisions that were good for their country? That's not a fact. For instance, different countries produce different things. When you go to Tanzania, you talk about the several minerals that Tanzania comes out with and trades among other nations. So if Tanzania, for instance, decides to do a trade back between Germany and themselves on the trade of diamonds, does it affect the trade within the EAC? Doesn't affect the relationship between the EAC. And are we saying that just because we have a trade relationship, then we lose our sovereignty to make decisions in terms of trade? I don't think so.
No, it doesn't. Are we going to a break, or can I say what I wish to say?
Say, and then we'll do the break.
This matter has a slight complexity because this discussion we're having around 2014 is when we started having these discussions, and we were having it as the East African community, not as Kenya. Now, in 2016, the agreement that was then reached at Kenya actually signed. Rwanda signed but didn't ratify it because the understanding was that it was supposed to take it to their parliament, respective parliaments. Uganda and Tanzania did not sign. Okay? So now, moving forward, new government in place, Kenya then signs. In my mind, everything you say is true, Gerald, except this. If this matter had not begun as something that was being worked out for the East African community, it would be a very straightforward matter. When you are trying to create an economic bloc and to strengthen it, there are details that perhaps we don't understand and things which your office might be able to clarify for us. And that is how we navigate around such a matter, which we started as the East African community. And now Kenya seems to have said, okay, folks, you seem to be dilly-dallying. We had this opportunity in 2016, you didn't take it. So now we are now moving forward and we are signing. The reality is, if we sign an agreement with the EU, such as the one we're talking about, it means all the 27 members of that EU will be able to trade with us. It would be a lie if we said it would not affect the trade within East Africa. It will. Now, how much it will affect and whether it will be adverse is a subject of discussion, but it will.
There's something. Let's take a break, then we continue the conversation. 26 minutes to 8. Kenya's biggest conversation. Gerald Bitok is the Director of Public Communications at State House. He's here. Today we are discussing the role of government communications, plan and delivery. And he's now in that role. He's taken a couple of minutes to explain to us what the role entails. Now that we understand, let's engage.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Ushindi cleans like no other. It lathers more and lasts long. Ushindi, a long-lasting bar that removes all stains easily.
Your waist, my heart, awe kuna ni kuna kuna ni kuna kuna my lips.
But he did rush for the well, he be much. Now gotta make my dog be the rush. The kind money we got.
Babe, have you heard Dance Holding by Uncle Jing Jong?
But have you heard
Have you heard? Have you heard?
Spotify has over 100 million songs.
The University Council, Board of Management, and Senate, staff and students of Garissa University request the pleasure of your presence during the 4th graduation ceremony for the conferment of degrees and award of diplomas by the Chancellor on Thursday, 22nd June 2023 from 8 a.m. The chief guest will be the Right Honorable Moses M. Wetangula, Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Aden Duale, Cabinet Secretary for Defense, and Honorable Ezekiel Machogu, Cabinet Secretary for Education, will grace the occasion. The ceremony will be live on KTN Home and streamed on our social media platforms. Congratulations to the class of 2023. Engine revs, will you be ready to get all that petrolhead enthusiasm at this year's annual Digger Motor Show? Well, you better belt up and make your way to KICC from the 20th to the 23rd of July 2023 for a wholesome 4-day event. Come and join car lovers, bike enthusiasts, spare part dealers, insurance, as well as asset financiers, and more for what will be an unforgettable experience by far. We are going all out to make it a great show for you and the whole family with something for everyone. So you better not miss out. For more information or participation, contact Caroline on 0723-803601 or email sinyandiaka@standardmedia.co.ke. Digger Motor Show 2023 is brought to you by Standard Group and Digger Motors and is powered by Spice FM.
Towards Huru Gardens and then out towards Wilson, and then some of it will branch out towards Rilo Dingawe and then out towards Aerodrome. So that looks pretty packed right about now. On Jogger Road, it's busy as you go towards Landis. It's moving. Going to hold on in some parts, bumper to bumper. It's heavy on the thicker superhighway. You want to use the service lanes as you're trying to get into the CBD. And we're looking at many lanes on Kiambu Road right about now. Coming out of Muthaiga, Limuru Road, and towards the CBD via way of either Wangari Maathai Way or coming then and joining with Muranga Road. That also looks pretty busy. Oloitoktok Road, James Gesho Road, all of that touching on Wayaki Way at some point. Very busy this morning. Still a bit gloomy, but the sun is going to shine through it all. Let's know what's going on where you are. Want to keep things moving this Tuesday? Let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
Gerald Bitok is the Director of Public Communications at State House. He works in the office of the State House spokesperson. He's here with us this morning talking about the role of government communications. Gerald, you said something that was actually, it's something we've said here many times before. Even you have said it here, that the government is doing a lot of things, but they don't communicate. Where the government loses the plot is they do everything else, but part of communication comes in late. But also we see that even in the private sector, where you design a project, you are launching a new product, and you have done everything. You've ticked all the boxes, including how the launch is going to look like, what you're going to do, who you're going to invite. And then that's the time you're thinking, okay, now communication. How are you going to communicate this at the very end? Whereas it's important to start a project with communication in mind. Now, do you think the government is at a position where it can also change its perception of communication and start policy with communication in mind, start program and projects with communication in mind, so that at the point when you are coming to communicate, you've already been taking us through. The government is thinking of this new policy. The government is launching this new program, or this is where the program has gone so far, and these are now the benefits of that thing that I started telling you 10 years ago.
I think that's where we are trying to head to, because like you've already said, there's been somewhat like a missing link between the government delivery, and the people, because you realize that the citizens, especially Kenyans, are very impatient people. He'll put you in government because he's even a government that has not even gotten its first budget. But then they have a lot of expectations. They want to know what is going on, what exactly is happening. Why are we going through this? Why is the price of fuel this much? Why is hunger this much? Why are we not seeing a change in this and such a way? So there's a need to constantly keep these people because it's a relationship. It's like two people are getting into a marriage, and you have the pact of promises, and they were always asking, "Where will come and utanulia gari after 2 months?" And what is going on? Then you have to explain that maybe when I got into this marriage, maybe I estimated this or I underestimated this and that, or this is the match that we are doing. But then again, give credit where it's due. I think the government has done a lot within these few months that most of us would not really appreciate if you are not told about. For instance, you'll be looking at the issues of the cost of living and agriculture, for instance. We've talked several times about the subsidy programs that we've been having around production versus consumption. For the longest time, we've always subsidized unga, which is the final product. That you're saying you mail Rick at whatever price you're going to mail in. Then as a government, we're going to come in and close in the gap and make it affordable. But then again, it doesn't really fix the cost of living as it should be. And when the president came in, he has taken the very tough and hard path of saying that we are not going to subsidize consumption anymore. We're going to subsidize production. And as we are speaking right now, over 3 million bags of fertilizer have been taken up. Right, since we started the program, actually 5 million farmers were registered. We've seen an uptake of 3 million. 3 million farmers actually have taken up the fertilizer, subsidized fertilizer. Now, the ripple effect of this is that in the next few months, and I come from the Rift where we farm often, and I can guarantee you that in the next few months we are going to have a bumper harvest, and obviously that's going to affect the cost of table food, looking at unga, for instance. So you really has a lot of things that are happening in between that we don't get to speak about it. Look at Asla Fund, for instance. Billions of money have been dispersed. Of course, there's been the issues of the impact on but even done the second phase on businesses that chairmans can get financed and they move and they run with this. We've also seen what the president has been doing on the international platform. For the first time, we are seeing a more acceptable country across the globe. We have seen the president engaging African countries. He has been very active, especially on Pan-African engagements. And he has been the big brother in terms of the Pan-African leadership, as you have seen, he's taken direction and led with that. On the international relationship, we are looking in at the return of very warm relationship. Look at America, look at UK, for instance. Look at the at the European side of the globe. So we're seeing a president that has been very active on the international platform to get in more partnerships and more businesses to come on board. We had a signing between the EU Chamber of Commerce. We heard about the American Chamber of Commerce that not only gives the country a good leverage in the international politics and economics, but also gives every citizen an opportunity to access business across the globe. So there are a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that we would really have to speak about. Look at housing, for instance. The president has done a groundbreaking of thousands and thousands of housing units.
How many so far?
I think I would have to check the numbers exactly. But we've seen the groundbreaking of the housing units.
Housing projects.
The housing projects that is supposed to at least ensure that it can subsidize the provision of housing.
I'd like to engage on those three things of what
Okay.
you've talked about. All right. So there is the issue of the subsidy. And of course, there's the issue of the Hustler Fund, because we got to a point now we're no longer getting a lot of public awareness on what's happening with the Hustler Fund and something else. Let's start with the subsidy. 3 million farmers have received subsidized fertilizer.
Yes.
In how many counties?
40 counties.
In 40 counties.
Yes.
Is Mandera one of those counties?
I'd love to check the specifics of which counties exactly have done an uptake of that. in terms
I'm
of
asking that
where
because
exactly, but because
Abdullahi Alas has texted me from Mandera. He says, in Mandera County, there are no fertilizers received from the national government. The county Department of Agriculture has nothing, not available locally. And there are other areas of the country where people have called here and they put comments on social media. And they say, we hear of subsidized fertilizer, but we haven't come across it. What do you tell those people who have not?
I think all the subsidies were
interacted
being distributed towards the chains of NCPB. So if someone has not received the subsidized fertilizer, they have to state the reason why. Is it that they went to the stores and they missed the fertilizer? Was it not there? Is it that they went and they told the fertilizer is not there? What were the reasons that were given by those officers? Because the fertilizer should be available across the country.
Okay. So it should
Unless
be
the farming
available.
country, yes.
but 3 million with the 5 million farmers registered. So there's still a shortfall of 2 million farmers who have not received fertilizer.
It's about absorption because you cannot guarantee 100% absorption on any government project. So if you are doing the fertilizer, for instance, there's no guarantee that Ndu, who is sitting in Nairobi, is going to take up fertilizer, for instance, or the next one. It doesn't mean that the project has failed, but it only means that maybe there are people who have not absorbed the fertilizer. And it's a continuous process. That's one the beauty about this, that it's a continuous process. It's not a one-off thing. Depending on the farming seasons, it's a you could be doing the planting season, doing the NPK. At some point, you're doing the CN and the urea. So it's a continuous process. The subsidy fertilizer program is a continuous process. So the uptake needs to continue, and it would be good to get those feedback as well. Like Abdullah, I should be able to know, and I think I know him. I should be able to know why he was not able to access the fertilizer, and then we can give the feedback back to Ministry of Agriculture. But I cannot sit here and tell you that there is 100% absorption of that of the fertilizer.
Okay.
Something
else that happens is, you've talked about the president came in and said, let's break away from subsidizing consumption. Subsidizing consumption actually just happened the other day towards the election.
Yes.
Before that, the kind of subsidy that we see often is subsidizing offtake from farmers, where NCPB buys maize from farmers at a certain price that is well above maybe the market, and then they put up a certain amount. Are we likely to see the same happening this year at harvest time, when farmers then come and say, we want to sell our maize, but at this particular price, and then the NCPB then has to match that price?
I think the government is going to make a declaration on the buying price. Of course, like that's done before. There will be several harvests, and the government has said we're going to buy the maize at this much. There are many farmers, of course, who are going to sell also to private players. We have millers who are doing who are milling every single day. At this point of time, it's not only that the farmer relies 100% on the government uptake, but also on the private sector and the guys who are milling and selling for commercial purposes. So the government will set this price, that this is a much that we're going to buy the maize at, right? And the government is not a government of Uganda. The maize will still be here. Anyway, will still be within the circulation. So when you talk about if we are subsidizing unga, for instance, then we will not have the maize that we're talking about harvesting. So we're harvesting now because we've subsidized production. The biggest headache as a farmer, if you have ever farmed before, the biggest headache of any farmer is the cost of production. If your cost of production does not match or is more than the output, then it doesn't make sense to farm. So any farmer right now who is farming would be very keen to know if the final price at the NCBB, for instance, would be 4,000 shillings. When I make my calculation on the cost of fertilizer, there is a point that even fertilizer was 7,000 Kenyan shillings, right? And however much you try to calculate, even for just subsistence, it was not making sense. So if we are subsidizing production, it means that we are not only giving a farmer a chance to earn from either front, whether you're selling to government, whether you're going to sell in private sector, or whether you're also consuming as well, whether using it to pay fees, because even schools are telling you can bring maize. But then again, they can match up the pricing. This is the cost of maize, and you can use it to set off your fees. So not only are we giving the farmer an opportunity to negotiate in the market, whether you're selling them to the private sector or you're selling to the government, you still have a margin because your cost of production are very low. Why have we always complained about the influx of imports in terms of food products, for example, from Uganda? The cost of producing maize in Uganda is almost nil. So a farmer in Uganda would sell that maize for almost nothing. And it comes to this country, and you cannot compete. And in an era of an open market protocol, you cannot say, like the time when Tanzania was saying they cannot take up our eggs, or they cannot take up our chicken, our chicklets. We cannot get to a point where you're saying we have to stop supply. We can only compete in terms of production. What is the cost of production of a bag in Kenya and Tanzania? If our cost of production is almost at the same level, then we don't need to import from Tanzania because the market price would still be the same. So the subsidized fertilizer does not only give the farmer an opportunity to negotiate better in the market, but also ensures that we have more and more maize produced for self-sustenance.
Okay. Looking at some of the things that were said by the government in place today that hinged on policy in the name of promises during campaigns, how then would you update Kenyans on a regular basis in terms of what is happening with those things? So there were certain things that were said in the run-up to elections, and then even after the government was put in place, that for one reason or another, right now have not been done. There may be things in progress. There may be things that are futurely in terms of the execution. How would you then be updating Kenyans on some of those things? We're looking at the water provision, for example. I believe the number given was 100 dams to be built around the country, to be constructed and things like that, that Kenyans, are hinged upon and waiting to hear back. How would you then be updating Kenyans with regularity on the things that then are policy, as you've said?
That's what we've been trying to do, to ensure that we can keep Kenyans abreast on what has been happening. For instance, last week we spoke much about fertilizer program, how much we've been able to achieve. Also getting feedback from farmers. We have a lot of footages from the ground, from farmers who have benefited and how much they've been able to produce better this year. So we'll try as much as possible to keep the public engaged on what exactly the government is doing and the results that are coming back from the public. Not just about us sitting somewhere and saying, okay, this is what we've given you. It's also about coming back to you, like farmers, coming to the farmers and asking them, the fertilizer that we gave you, did you get access to fertilizer? Yes. At how much? This is the price that you got. What are the results? Someone will show you their farm. This is the much I've been able to harvest. You've seen even women who are doing ngwashe farming or sweet potatoes. You've seen farmers who have been, as far as even Innoss'B, all parts of the country. We've tried to take feedback, Rift Valley and Western, trying to see Central Kenya, trying to see what exactly have been able to be moved in terms of the government programs. Now, there are programs that will take time. When you talk about dams, for instance, the conversation around dams was around PPPs and how much can the government can do at that level. So that's not something that you can say you're going to deliver overnight. For instance, we have dams that we are doing at that point. How long does it take to build a dam, for instance? So as we move forward, the government will be able to do much more, and we'll be able to come out here and say the government has done maybe 20 cubic meter of dam. The government has been able to disperse this much to education. We are seeing also the issues of universal health care that is coming up under Ministry of Health, ensuring that all Kenyans, this is part of the promise, ensuring that every Kenyan can get dignified healthcare services. Dignified healthcare services exclusive, without any exclusions. So you look at UHC, the universal healthcare cover that's coming in as well. When that point comes where the government is launching and implementing it, we'll come back and tell you this is the much the government is doing at the Ministry of Health. This is what the UHC entails. This is what will be expected from you. This is what NHI will do for you. This is what any other government agency will do for you. So progressively, we'll be able to update on the deliveries. We are only how many months? The government is a few months in office. Almost a year. This is the first budget that is coming out. So at least let's wait for the budget. You're seeing the allocations that have been done, about 5 billion into fertilizer. When you come back, we'll tell you what's happened with the 5 billion. You're talking to other allocations that has been done, maybe into Ministries of Water, Ministry of Health. At least we'll come back and tell you, okay, according to the budget that we passed in 2023, this is the much the government has been able to do. But I think it's overbearing at this point also to ask the government about the dam it promised in a manifesto. How long exactly will it take to build?
Okay, but Gerald, do you think also it would be prudent in nature then also that should things not go as expected, that Kenyans should have an opportunity to hear from your good offices also that, look, guys, this is what we thought we would be able to do. And because of this, we've not been able to, rather than, allow things to snowball to a situation whereby people are, your office is met with angst and all sorts of things. Do you think also that would be a stance that you would take and say, look, this is the situation, not just progressively. There's sometimes when things are at a standstill and Kenyans ought to be told the truth.
Of course, there'll be those moments where things that are supposed to be moving are not moving. And I think, as the communication is a continuous process, I cannot preempt now and communicate to you what is going to happen in the next 3 weeks, what is going to stop, what is going to stall, or what is not going to happen at that point. I cannot preempt now and communicate to you. But it gets to that point whereby critical services or critical things within government are not moving. It's the responsibility of government to come out and communicate to its people and the citizens that this is a situation with this, and this is what we are trying to do about it. So I would not sit here and preempt what is going to happen in the next 2 weeks or what exactly is going to stall. We just started off. There are programs that are running. If it gets to that point where you're asking me, you call me and you're like, you talked about subsidized, like what you're asking me now about subsidized fertilizer. That's the feedback I would really want to follow up on, because I've also been very keen on this subsidized fertilizer. I think I'd want to understand why a Kenyan would not have access to the subsidized fertilizer. Then from that point, then we can handle that progressively as we move forward, because feedback and delivery work hand in hand. If I give you this and you have to give me feedback about it. If I told you I'm going to give you this and then you feel you're not getting it, that feedback as well as helps us and helps the government to ensure that it can improve on its delivery.
You know, when the president speaks, he likes to give timelines. Often in his speeches, he'll talk about in 6 months' time, in October, in come January next year, come March, right? So already he is setting timelines for delivery of these projects. And of course, the expectation is that the president, by the time he's saying that, is because he has sat with the relevant officers and they've said, this, Mr. President, will be able to do around this time. In Galana Kulalu, he said that by June, we'll be having a PPP framework that will then allow in the private sector to start rolling out into Galana Kulalu. Now, the question that Ndu is asking is what I want to amplify. Is it your office's role to come back and say, so the president had talked about something happening in June, we are in June, and this is the progress of where we are? Because we don't expect the president to be now coming back at it. Nilisema June, nilisema mwezi wa kumi. It is now your job. So we are in June. Where are we with the Galana Kulalu PPP framework? Where are we with the promises that have been made so far, the things that were to happen by around this time? So how will you be keeping us updated?
I think we've been speaking. It's not the first time that me and you are speaking here. The fact that I've also invited me means we've been speaking.
Yes.
And you know what they've been doing. If there is any information that you would need to go to the public on the state of things, I'll be more than available to get you that information.
No. Proactively. I mean, this is your job. That's why we as the taxpayers are paying you.
But I
come out and say, as the person who speaks for the presidency, who amplifies the presidency's message, the president made a commitment at this point. This is the progress of that commitment.
And that's exactly what I'm telling you we are doing about the projects that are going on, but the service delivery. And we're looking at the manifesto as a roadmap for Kenya Kwanza, right? And we need to get to a point where we can map out the deliveries that are supposed to be done at a certain point, and we can say, okay, this is what the presidency promised, or this is what is in the manifesto. Maybe it's within Health, Ministry of Agriculture, within Ministry of Education. We can tell you this is the much that is going on. And if there's anything that has been, because I cannot hold the president to his timelines. And I think I stated that very clearly, that I don't hold the president to his timelines. So I can only communicate what has been done by the president. Tell you, that's what I'm telling you about the fertilizer, and you can hold me accountable and tell me, okay, fine, there's a farmer somewhere who's saying he has not received fertilizer. So I can take that information and try to ensure why, and find out why that person has not been able to access that service, for instance. So we'll try as much as possible proactively to ensure that we can keep every citizen updated on what exactly has been done. But one thing that I cannot is that I cannot hold the president to his timelines.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll invite you again, Gerald. Now you are in government, you're fresh in government, you're finding your way through the corridors and the many doors.
And I think you guys are being too hard on me. Considering I've not even sat well on my seat.
Now we'll invite you again after you've seen the things. Come and tell us, coming from outside, and the communication that you've been doing outside, and the frustration that you've been having with not hearing the right message from government, and then getting in there, what is it that you find that maybe needs to change so that government can communicate more effectively and better? But congratulations on this job.
Thank you. I think also we need to invite you as partners, and you find that sometimes the biggest role of the media is the same role that we have as government to engage the public, and it's in the public good. So we want to invite you as partners to ensure that as well you can proactively speak about what the government is doing. Even as you think about what it's not doing, you can also tie it up with what it's doing, what the government is doing, so that we all ensure that the public is informed. Because I think there's always been a missing link between, there's only much that government communication can do without the mainstream communication as you are. Me sitting here means that I can get a bigger space to speak to more citizens than now speak in my own corner where I am.
That's true.
So invite you as partners to ensure that as well you can partner with us, and ensure that we can speak to more and more Kenyans. For instance, this message on fertilizer, maybe you can ask me for more information. Then tomorrow, when I'm listening in at 6 a.m., I want to hear you saying, this is what has happened.
Very well said, Gerald. We have a partnership. You'll be a regular visitor to this show so that you can give us updates and we can get to understand what the